Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Consortium's Teaching Indigenous Peoples Day.
Welcome, everybody, and it is with indeed great honor and pleasure that I introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is the esteemed Marty Neddeau, who is a associate professor of elementary education and American Indian Studies at Cal State Chico in Northern California. And we are so thrilled that he is with us today. Our second speaker is Marty Meeden, who is now in Garnerville, Nevada, and who will be joining us. Marty has a long activist career in both the CTA and NEA, having chaired the American Indian Native American Caucus in both organizations, and having done a lot of work on exposing the needs and the benefits of working with Native American and American Indian children, particularly what educators should do. Marty Levi is a teacher in Southern California, is also quite active and has worked both in NEA and CTA on the Native American and American Indian Caucus. She is an elementary school teacher, and if you look on our website for Liberated Ethnic Studies, you will see Marty and Mary and Robert's work. Robert will also be joining us, Robert Levi, who's currently an elder in residence at Cal State San Bernardino, working, mentoring, and counseling young Native students on working and learning to negotiate the institution of higher education. CSU San Bernardino is the only university that has such a program, and Robert's work is being looked at by other CSUs who most definitely will start a program similar. So those are our four presenters.
I know, I was calling you and calling Anna's phone. You guys didn't answer. What did you get though?
Somebody needs
Did you get food? I mean, did you get something to drink?
Somebody needs to mute themselves. And now I will turn it over to Marty, who will off on the land acknowledgement. I'm going to ask that everybody really check their audio so that we're all muted and can give all our attention to our Indigenous, Native, and American Indian colleagues today.
Thank you. I am Marty Meeden. I'm Washoe and Paiute Washoe from the North Shore of the Lake Tahoe, California, Nevada, and the Loyalton area, and Paiute from Mono Lake and Yosemite, Eastern Sierra, and most of you know where Yosemite is. A former educator. I am now retired and continue to be an activist here in the Carson Valley, which is about I'm about 20 minutes from south of Carson City, Nevada, the capital. I live in the valley where there is still a sundown siren, remnant of Jim Crow, and most of us know that Jim Crow filtered into the West and impacted us Native folks and other ethnic minorities. But the siren here was intended to make sure that the Washoes were out of town 30 minutes after the siren went on, and we still have that going on. And so I'm actively working on getting that turned off. There was a MSNBC News report today, same place where Donald Trump had his rally on Saturday night. And it's not a coincidence that he picked a very positive place for him to come in. So this land acknowledgement today, I'm serving you today from Washoe territory. There are 5 bands of Washoes, and I'm living in and presenting to you from the Powelu band of people of the valley, the Washoe people. Washos are people, the original inhabitants of the Lake Tahoe Basin and the surrounding areas. Acknowledgements for the people of, they were considered Great Basin people, pine nut eaters, but we're also acorn folks, very connected with California. So I was asked, I'm going to read what I have concerning what is a land acknowledgement and why it is important. You're going to be getting a little screenshot in a bit to help you think about where we are today in regards to 1492 and the days before, a few days before Columbus Day. So a land acknowledgement is a formal way to recognize the indigenous peoples who have come before you and who were removed, often violently, from their land due to colonization. It is a way to acknowledge the vital relationship between indigenous peoples and the land while recognizing that those people still exist and practice their cultures today. Land acknowledgements are one small way to bring to light treaties and broken promises. It is a way to start speaking out against the genocide, cultural appropriation, and all other wrongdoings that have been done to the indigenous peoples of both North and South America. There are many ways to conduct a land acknowledgement, and it starts with researching whose land you are living on and recreating on. Using websites such as Native Land Digital and Whose Land are great places to start. Combining good intentions with correct information is the perfect way to create a good land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are not meant to be a strict word for word requirement. They are meant to be done out of respect. They are meant to have education behind them. Colonization has displaced and killed indigenous people across the globe who have existed since time immemorial. Today, these people still face the traumas of colonialism. So again, I thank you, and I'll turn it back to Dr. Montaño.
So the way we're going to, the way we've actually set up the day today is by asking some key questions to our panelists, and Lupe and I will ask those questions. And then towards the middle of our presentation today, we actually are honored to have Browning actually present a lesson or to capture the importance of stories in Native American studies. So it is my honor to ask the very first question, and I'll ask it of Browning and then Mary, and then of Robert, and we're gonna focus on the three systems of education. So Browning, if you can respond to what we're facing in higher education, Mary in elementary, and there's Robert coming in. I'll let him come in first. And then Robert will answer as a former high school teacher, but could also answer working with students who we want to recruit into the CSU. So the question is, what are the issues facing the discipline of Native American and American Indian studies today? And what should teachers be aware of as we work to integrate Native American and American Indian studies into our classrooms? Browning, if you'll start.
Which, thank you. Hello, everyone. Browning Neddeau Dechkas, Panazwa Nindesh Nozwin, Wadwami and Dow, Shishibenik and Imidogwest. My name is Browning. Panazwa is my Potawatomi name. I'm enrolled citizen Potawatomi Nation. I'm coming today from the lands of the Mechoopda Indian tribe of Chico Rancheria. And to respond to this particular question, there are three parts to my answer here, and briefly outlining them. One is race lighting, the second is generalizations, and the third one is being counted. So I'd like to start with race lighting as my first one. And to talk about race lighting, I have a paragraph that's a quote from Doctors Frank Harris III and Dr. J. Luke Wood that was in Diversity Issues in Higher Education in 2021. And I'm going to read the paragraph of their work to help understand what the term race lighting is, and then to talk about what that means for American Indians briefly. So, quote, race lighting refers to the process whereby people of color question their own thoughts and actions due to systematically delivered racialized messages that make them second guess their own lived experiences with racism. When race lighted, people of color may begin to question their interpretation of reality and begin to wonder if they are being overly sensitive. In our own experiences, race lighting most often occurs when other Black people question our mistreatment. When this mistreatment is called to the attention of the perpetrator's passionate delivery of innocence and claims of the victim's misinterpretation can be incredibly convincing. A common example of this is when a Black student is told with a sense of surprise that they are, quote, actually smart. In this microaggression, if this microaggression is brought to the attention of the person who said it, their most common response is to state with extreme conviction that the student, quote, misunderstood or, quote, took their comments out of context or, quote, being too sensitive. The level of conviction can lead to the student considering if they actually created the problem in this interaction rather than the person who caused the infraction. Whether the goal is to protect themselves from accusations of racism, deliberate lying, or obliviousness, the power of race lighting cannot be underestimated, end quote. And I see this in higher education when we think about people who are using their position as they identify or enrolled as American Indian or Native American. Maybe they may not be involved in their communities for which they're from. Maybe they don't know anything about their Native identity, but they're using it to help circle powers that be in institutions, which in the institutions I've worked with have been primarily white institutions. So they're continuing a narrative that supports them in their position of power and supports the administration that's in power, which aligns with this idea of race lighting. And we're seeing this, I'm seeing this, I should say, as a first person narrative. I'm seeing this as an issue in Native American studies and just raising awareness of this happening in Native American studies and American Indian studies, that we have race lighting happening on our campuses, and it's something that needs to have attention to it. The second one that I mentioned earlier is generalizations. Perhaps have guest speakers come and tell their lived experiences, but do not generalize their lived experiences to all Native peoples. Stories are all valid stories, but that doesn't mean that one person's story is the same as the next person's story. And later on, I get to share a brief lesson on storytelling, so I'm going to pause with that part. But they're all parts of data points, all these different stories, but they aren't meant to be, some may say, more Indian than another Indian. Each tribe also has its own stories, traditions, and beliefs, and sometimes you might see that some tribe might have a similar one or the same as a different tribe. But generalizing stories, traditions, and belief can lead to such things as this Columbus guy finding America, which leads people to think America means the present day US. But where exactly did he land in the present day US? Also, Columbus didn't find anything. People were already thriving where he claimed to discover. And my third point that I'm seeing in Native American studies and what we should be aware of, besides race lighting and generalizations, is how American Indians are counted in higher education. How are they, and how are we accurately counting so we are seen in higher education? You know, when you select that you're 2 or more in higher education, you have to dig really deeply into data to find out if someone identifies as American Indian. And if someone selects a Hispanic and they select American Indian, then that they count as Hispanic. And you have to really dig deeper to find out the American Indian. But beyond that, the larger problem is that being American Indian is not a race. Being American Indian is about sovereignty and being a citizen of a nation that has their own government. But we live in a system and systems that are driven by Eurocentric ideas of race, this idea of race, and they put American Indians in this idea of race. But when I look at that, I look at Potawatomi being a drop-down option. I don't look at American Indian as a drop-down option. And what happens if in the drop-down menu that your tribe isn't even listed? So it should really be a separate area in application and in counting, so we can appropriately and accurately count American Indians in higher education. The UC system has worked on doing this by thinking about how to have students be able to identify based on their tribe. The CSU system is not doing that yet. So those are the three that I have for today to share. What are some of the issues in Native American studies, and what should teachers be aware of? And that's race sliding generalizations, and how are we even counting American Indians in higher education?
Thank you, Brownie. Mary?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Mary Levi. I am a citizen of the Hopi tribe in northern Arizona. I've been a teacher and educator for 31 years, and in the elementary level. So I'm going to piggyback off of what Brownie has said and say exactly, not exactly, but very close to what elementary teachers are facing in their curriculum and in teaching Native curriculum. A lot of educators in elementary schools are still using old material. We're still looking at how cute it is to make little sailboats for Columbus, and saying all of those the same poems like Sail the Ocean Blue. So those are some of the things that we're facing. So I'm going to kind of go with what Brownie said. Generalizations are facing our elementary teachers, and accurate curriculum, or accurate resources, and then being counted even in public schools. There's many of our students who are being counted as American Indian because of the title of race. But yes, I am sorry, I'm having trouble with my computer, my camera. So I got it on my phone, but I have it on audio on my computer. We are also the accurate resources are we're using old social studies textbooks. We haven't gotten away from those. We're not looking at resources where our Native tribes are developing a lot of good curriculum that we're not tapping into. We're not looking at what Smithsonian and their Knowledge 360 is tapping into. And that's kind of something that we're trying to create with Liberated Ethnic Studies as well, is to have that type of resources available to everybody. We need to, the funding source for our public schools is, they want to tap into them, but then they're also looking at our how we can gain more money by having more people be acknowledged as Native, but yet they're not even asking. So digging further into our backgrounds, or asking further questions about who are you tribally affiliated with, and then with that, it doesn't help educators when it comes to bringing in our community. So if we have people who can give stories of their own, from their own family, and they're willing to share it with our students in our public schools, then we should be able to have that discussion. So There you go.
Thank you, Mary. And Robert, for students in high school, how would you characterize the issues related to American Indian Studies? And Mary, you might have to move your phone just a teeny bit so
I
that
don't
we
want to
can
share my
see.
picture.
There he is.
Now, Mio and everybody, I'm Robert Levi. I'm a citizen of the Torres Martinez Desert Coy Indians. I am currently the elder in residence here at California State University San Bernardino, and we're sitting in my kind of brand new office, so we're getting accustomed to everything. We just gave our Indigenous Day MMWG2 plus presentations today, so we're kind of taking a deep breath here. But anyway, looking at the high school, basically, it's coming from the resource from boarding schools to suspension boards, report on California Indian, just basically the educational system within the state of California. And what we're finding is that, you know, a major dropout rate, a major quitting time for Indian students in the state of California comes in junior high. In high school, again, with the ethnic studies program, and also with Assemblymember Ramos's AB 1703, which is supposed to put more emphasis in California Indian history and the history of social studies framework for California. Again, we're finding that teachers need to be aware of what they're going to start to be able to teach and come to the point of understanding American Indian and California Indian history and looking at bringing it across the students. We find through the California Teachers Association that only 3% of the teachers in California are American Indian or California Indian. So again, we're looking at non-Indians trying to teach an Indian background to other students. Also reinforcing the idea of looking toward local tribes to get their history, their stories within the curriculum, which is another piece of legislation that Assemblymember Ramos had put through. And again, what we're finding moving into more of the relationship between the community colleges and high schools with the CSU system as one of community. When we have students coming, Indian students coming from public schools or any school into university, we're finding that a lot of them don't cut through the 4 years, or if they're 2 years, they come here still unprepared. Well, we figured that out at CSUSB with a MOU with the California Indian Nations College, where what they do in their curriculum sets them up to be more successful here at CSUSB. And again, the programs that we're starting here, we just chartered American Indian student organization on campus. We've got myself as the elder in residence. You know, my main goal is to keep the students here at CSUSB. We're also creating an American Indian history department at CSUSB. But again, going back to the influence we have on high school students, that's what, you know, we gear them to say, here's a place that you can come and be part of the community. You can come and be part of the family. And every place I go now, when we're talking with SYNC or with UCR or with Redlands or with Cal Poly Pomona, that's what the students always are talking about is we need a sense of community. We need a sense of belonging, and hopefully look to transition between high school and into a 4-year or a 2-year institution would be one of Indian community. Because again, that would keep the students here at CSUSB and any Cal State or UC. And also we're looking at the teachers as just becoming aware of who you're teaching and how you're teaching. I can't stress the idea of non-Indian teachers can be sympathetic, but they cannot be empathetic. If not as they've gone through historical trauma, not as they've gone through what Indian children, what Indian grandparents have gone through. But again, we're still looking to them to help us maintain that organizational framework for American Indian students to become successful within the public school system, that we're not shying away from where we should be within getting our voice out into the community, both non-Indian and Indian, and also bringing forth more interaction between reservation Indians and the community and the universities. So again, with that, looking toward that in the future, that's why we need more Indians as teachers to bridge that gap. And again, that's what we're trying to do here at CSUSB, is to recruit Indian students here to have them become teachers and flood the eye of the inland empire with those teachers, and hopefully get out into Northern California, Central California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Oregon, and then make sure that we have teachers who have American Indian background, American Indian citizenship, teaching about who we are. So again, looking toward what non-Indian teachers can do is just become aware of what we're doing for our people.
Thank you. Thank you. Lupe, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives at each of the levels. Those are extremely helpful for me, in conceptualizing my role as an educator at the level where I teach in high school. But I actually have a question that is for both Mary and for Robert. I know that you have, the two of you have worked a lot with Ramos in, pushing and crafting some of the legislation. And so essentially what I wanted to ask was, what is any legislation that we all should be looking at, we should be supporting for legislation that hasn't passed? What is it that you think that is preventing some of these laws that would, give resources to Native education? What are some of the barriers, and how can we help and support, especially this year being an election year?
Yeah, I got to see. One of the things that was a huge barrier when we were talking about when we first started talking about Assembly Bill 1554, which was the American Indian Education Act, was the word mandate. One of the things, when you take a look at all of the tribes up and down California, when they first started talking 10 years ago about changing the curriculum in the state of California, and how just changing curriculum for inclusion of Native curriculum, accurate curriculum, had to go through legislation, and also that it has to go through changing some of our Constitution of California. There are things that are in our Constitution of California that we even have to change just for Native curriculum. And so educating everybody in the legislation, the legislators, the senators, educating them on who and what Indian education is, what the curriculum currently is, and then making sure that we have that change. So the block was, we need Native tribes wanted to have accurate Indian education for all students in the public schools of California, and then have it mandated from kindergarten through 12th grade. Well, the problem with mandating anything is, what do you take out, and then what do you put back in and replace? What do you take out if you're gonna, because there's not enough time in the day to educate for all subjects to be made. So it came down to Assembly Bill, after 2 years, Assembly Bill 1554, that was written for to start looking at how to house American Indian resources in our CDE, and then how to get tribes to be able to give accurate information into our local schools, especially for 3rd grade, 4th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade, because those are the grades that have that in their curriculum, have U.S. history, American history. One is the state for 4th grade, 3rd grade has local government, and then 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade all have U.S. So those were at least trying to get in how to house and give teachers the resources of getting accurate curriculum. It's getting better and better, because more publishers are listening to what people are saying. An example of this is up in Round Valley, I think is where it was. There was an educator who was doing weekly readers. And what she did was she was teaching 3/4 of her class were Native students. And they said, well, why is our weekly reader more general and how come we don't see ourselves in it? So she wrote to a weekly reader. And so she wrote to a weekly reader and she said, my students want to know why can't they see themselves in a California history curriculum. And then they came out of her school and then interviewed all the students. What would you like to see? Interviewed parents, interviewed grandparents, had a day where people came in and listened to their stories, and weekly reader changed their curriculum for them. So these are ways that we can change our curriculum by asking our publishers and asking people to change up and say, stop the generalization, as Browning had started with, and say, take a look at who's here and who you're educating in our schools in California. And so that's kind of what the bill, American Indian Education Bill, was kind of aiming for, as well as having the Hastings Law Bill on changing that law building up in Berkeley. Because Hastings was one that had atrocities on the American Indian tribes up in that Berkeley area. And why keep promoting somebody who committed genocide on in the tribes? So those are some of the legislations that are going on, along with missing and murdered Indigenous women. They were also, that went into law. So all of these were promoted by Assemblymember James Ramos, and were signed on September 24th, California Native American Day, so by the governor. So these are all things that are taking place. Any more?
Legislation. I don't think there's anything coming on legislation coming up except for Prop 27 and 26, but not too much education involved in that. But if everyone wants to know, usually most of the tribes are saying no on 27 and 26, yes. But to be honest, from my point of view, 27 no, 26 you can go either way. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But again, looking down the road at that legislation, it would help tribes who are up and trying to start the small casinos. My tribe has a small casino, so it'll benefit us down the road. But in terms of what we've seen in the legislature and what James Ramos has been doing is really reinforcing the idea of identity and one of pride. And again, looking to support those bills would also help. The mascot issue is coming up. I just got a blurb from the local newspaper about 2 local schools in our area down here in the Inland Empire might be thinking of changing their names from the Altaloma Braves and the Norte Vista Braves to get rid of dropping the Braves icon to another issue. So again, that's another piece of legislature that people can be more aware of in terms of the local community, and make sure to get the point of both sides of the story in terms of the decolonization movement that we would like to have.
Can I also add too, along with AB 1554, the whole idea of knowing what sovereignty is, and American Indian sovereignty and tribal sovereignty and American Indian identity definitely goes hand in hand with our lessons in ethnic studies, along with but it can also be something that starts all the way down in kindergarten and feeds all the way up to 12th grade, because these are the people who are going to be voting on our legislators, are voting on our propositions. These are the people we want to have all students in California be able to know and understand these issues. Otherwise, you're spending, Native American tribes are spending more and more time and effort just educating on why they need to do change up, have a proposition up. And that was the key part of changing legislation, because Native Americans are the only ones that have to go through that process in order to change curriculum or anything in their tribal connections with government.
Let me go a little bit on the last part of this, a little bit of the scope and sequence of this, but looking at Public Law 280, California is a Public Law 280 state, which again puts us tribes in, gives up some of our sovereignty. Back in 1950s, that was part of that legislature that went through that. We would become more non-Indian, more like the non-Indian. So we gave up some tribal rights in terms of the big one is police officers on the reservation. We can have our own officers, but we can't arrest anybody. We can detain them until the sheriffs or the CHP or other entities come onto the reservation. And what we're finding out right now is that they really don't want to deal with the Indians in that kind of manner. And then also pass legislation in terms of the Supreme Court, Worcester versus Georgia. There's another one, so Worcester, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, ex parte Crow Dog. So again, part of this idea historically, looking up to what we're doing, that's part of again, what teachers should know.
Hey,
Thank you.
excellent, Brownie.
Yes, thank you. And Marty is also posting things. So Browning and Marty are adding to the conversation in the chat.
Cool.
Marty, the next question is for you. So a lot of times folks will ask, in what ways can teachers work within their union to support Native American issues? For example, in CTA, we know we have the Native American and Alaska Native Caucus. In my union, we have the Native American and Indigenous Peoples Caucus. What are the roles of non-Native teachers in supporting the work of our Native caucuses? And then what is the work of the unions in ensuring the voices of Native students and educators? And that question is for Marty.
Well, thank you. That's a very broad question, and I know I'm going to miss some things, so I'm sure Robert and Mary can assist me. First is there are 4 ethnic caucuses within both the CTA and the NEA, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian Pacific Islander, Hispanic, and African American. All caucuses are open to every and anyone that's interested in joining. Many of the folks that are non-Native that are coming in, they're wanting to know these same questions. How can I assist? How can I help? How can I be a better teacher? How can I advocate not just for my ethnic students, primarily Native students, and in many cases my one Native student I may have, and how can I assist Native families traversing the education system itself? And for most of us know that for many ethnic folks, the education system is one roadblock after another. And we become very angry. We become that irate parent. It's like, okay, the inside alarms go off in the campus when Mrs. Smith comes in and she's got that walk and she's carrying her child, and she's dragging a crying student in because she's upset about something. And unfortunately, Mrs. Smith that's probably her only time she comes to the school is when she has a complaint or has an issue. I would encourage all of our folks to encourage our parents to participate in, even if it's a PTA or a PTO, whatever the parent group is, get involved with the school site council, support a parent to get on school site council by you also going on school site council, because that's where the money and the decisions are made. In many cases, folks think that you're just a rubber stamp, but on school site council, that council can yes or no budget request directly at the school that the principal and the administration want. Because if you're not involved, all these things that are happening, it's like, well, they're going to spend their money this way, that way, but all that money is parent driven, and parents don't know that. Become aware of of the process. Make yourself visible on campus as parents. As a teacher now, we need to support those parents. We need to know those parents that are interested. You will see them frequently on campus because they're involved. Open your door to those parents. If they're not even your parent, open your door and mention to them, hey, let's talk about what's going on at this school. Let's see what we can do together, because you have no idea how many allies you have out there until you start asking, because there are many things that are happening that are issues that affect not just the teachers, but the parents and the kids that are skirted around. The union, when we're advocating mandating curriculum, that means there's money involved. And the money that the CTA with the education budget, that's sacred money. And so when we start saying we want to mandate, that means money is going to be taken from that education allotment from the state for these other issues. So in many cases, the union will not support it. How can we fix that? We start talking to those union folks and the union, your union representatives and the union staff, because we talk about, and I wrote that in the chat. It's not necessarily mandating, because we already have to do something in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and high school. We are enhancing that curriculum. So if we say, forget about mandates, but we enhance the curriculum with appropriate curriculum and images. A great resource for all teachers is the California State Park System. Most of us live near a state park, and each state park has to have something about the original peoples of the area. If you don't know who used to live in your area, go to the state park, talk to one of the rangers there. In many cases, there's an education person, and they can get you all that information. It's a start. If there is if you're near a reservation or you're close to a casino, you might go in and ask, hey, who can I talk to about, I want to try, I'm a teacher and I want to make sure I'm doing what I'm presenting in the classroom is appropriate for your tribe. There's going to be somebody around that you can connect with. We as ethnic folks in general, we're not going to go out there and, hey, I'm available. Teachers need to go out and knock on doors and find out and get these resources and or key people together for you. If you have resources, share them. Let folks know, hey, I did this thing on Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm going to be doing an appropriate Thanksgiving celebration. My one thing about Thanksgiving celebration is, if you're going to do a Thanksgiving celebration and you have Native kids in paper bags, paper bag vest and or feathers, what have you, then at Easter time, you do a Last Supper presentation with all the disciples in paper bags. Most of us would never do something like that, but yet we do that. We see these things still happening in elementary schools, And we need to call people out on it because paper is disposable. We are not costume Indians. The folks that had the hosted the first Thanksgiving. We also need to extend that story. What happened to them within the next 10, 15, 20 years? King Philip's War and the beheading and the heads on stakes over in Plymouth and all this other stuff that the people that we praise today about the Pilgrims' atrocities. Also remember though that all of us know a story somewhere in North America. Here in California, pull all those stories from the East Coast, from the North, from the South, and push all those stories into California, you're going to find a very similar story of what happened here in California that also happened throughout North America. So those stories we hear from Plymouth Rock and or the various massacres and various runaways of like Chief Joseph and his count to try to get to Canada. We had the same things here in California. It's just a matter of finding those stories and digging into them. Robert's a great resource for those types of things, especially in California. I went way off over here on this, but it's one of these: get involved, be a resource to the parents, be a resource for your fellow teachers, get involved with the caucuses, and or if you're in California, we have service center councils, and every service center council has a ethnic minority affairs committee that CTA gives them money to do events. Get involved that way. You don't necessarily have to be involved in all the union stuff, but get involved with the service center because the service center encompasses quite a few schools and in a large area, and start connecting with folks in your area that have those things already started. All right, I think I'm ready for the next question.
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of really important information also being shared in the chat about the Supreme Court decision and national laws. So call attention to our participants to look at the chat. And Lupe, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Marty, for all of that. That's super helpful.
You're welcome.
It's extremely helpful.
Thank you.
Now, my question is specifically for Robert. I know that you have been instrumental in, and your family as well, in the reconnaissance of the Cahuilla bird songs. And so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that. You know, tell us a little bit about it. Tell us why it's important to you, and also, you know, for lack of a better phrase, like the nuts and bolts of how it is that you got to the point where now Cahuilla bird songs are you know, being you know, blessed and are a part of many young Cahuilla people's lives. Okay, I think
I can't hear you, Robert.
Yeah, let's see. I think you need to unmute the other computer.
We okay now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was my engineer. So anyway, sure.
That was engineer, right?
Engineer, there you go. Well, on the Santa Fe Trail. Anyway, yeah, back in 1980, late 70s, early 80s, my father and 3 other Cahuilla elders got together with Paul Apodaca, who was fresh out of Chapman University, and he wrote a grant for them to just sit down and begin to teach our songs, our social songs, our creation songs, our migration songs, to the youth around the reservations, Saboba, Barongo, Agua Caliente, Torres Martinez, and then just let them know about who we are and what the songs are about, because they were dying out. At that time, where we hold ceremony at our big houses, they were burning them down by 1980. 88, I think, was the last big house that was burnt down. There was the Doro big house out on Torres Martinez. And I asked my father, why are we doing this? Why aren't we maintaining tradition? And he said, it's just not being maintained by the young ones. They're not finding any kind of interest in what's happening, but they did show an interest in singing songs. So with my father, with 3 other elders, got together and began teaching the songs. And again, that just created a renaissance in not only our language, but also our customs. Going back and listening to the elders, and now you could find bird songs from the bottom of the Grand Canyon with the Hualapai and Havasupai, to the Yahavaton, the Serrano Indians, to the Kumeyays down in San Diego, all the way to Fort Yuma and into Arizona. So again, it just picked up left and right, and my father had no idea that this would come to that much of an important cultural renaissance for the Southwest. I mean, if he was alive, he'd probably be very honored and very just amazed of what those 4 elders had done. And again, like I said before, the bird songs are our creation stories. They are talking about, how we came to be in terms of the Coachella Valley, circling the North American continent 7 times, and finally one of the clans said, this looks like a good place to be, coming over to San Jacinto Mountains, and then bang, just set forth in Tahquitz Canyon, and that's where the Kuyas began to settle. And again, I think that also helped the young ones understand who they are, and having some kind of Kuya pride in who we are, where we've been, and where we're going. And I find that happening right now, with the California Indian Nations College, and what we're trying to do here at CSUSB is get a revitalization of the youth going to higher education, and also with the bird songs as well, camaraderie. Everybody gets together now. Also, we all play peon, which is a gambling game, which is pretty. It starts at dusk and ends in sunrise, and again, there's different songs that are being learned. There are peon songs, they're not bird songs, and also the ceremonial songs. My family just found one of my grandfather's social songs, his bird songs back in 1962, 64, and also a reel-to-reel of our ceremonial songs. So we have that. I don't know what we're going to get about the ceremonial songs, but again, we have the bird songs that we're going to release probably in December sometime at our gathering. But again, people are just interested in not only Kuya Indians, but also everybody else around Southern California. And also, we're talking about more and more being culturally aware. And what we're looking at is, we have the process of, rock your mocks, which is basically your shoes. I don't like the title because we in Southern California don't wear moccasins or yucca sandals. So I guess rock your yucca sandals, right? Rock your Converse or whatever you have. Also, we have the regalia of our Kuya bird songs. The ribbon shirts and the ribbon skirts that are just unbelievably colorful. And as we look, the regalia of Plains Indians powwow regalia, it's just very, very fluorescent, very, very colorful. And again, we find that very helpful. What are you doing?
Making your board rattles.
Yeah, making board rattles. Yeah, that all those 4 elders and probably others, to be honest, you have this system of learning how to make a gourd rattle. You don't let anybody else use your gourd rattle unless you're given permission. And then you decorate them as best you can with whoever you think is would represent who you are and the pride that you have, or your moiety. I'm a coyote moiety. My moiety is coyote, and the wildcat Tukwit is the other one. Isil is mine in terms of the coyote. So you can decorate your rattle any way you want. And again, also it brings that pride idea. You know, we sing our desert songs, and the mountain Kuya sing their mountain songs, and the Pascagoula sing their songs. And you try to figure, okay, well, we think we sing better than they do, and they think so. We have that little bit of competition, but not pushing it into. And again, I refer to my father. We have competitions in bird songs, and my father and the other elders were saying, no, it's not something you should be doing. It's a social song. It's for social gathering. I mean, it's like, Plains Indians going to powwows, and when we go to our gatherings, our big times up north, you just get this really cool feeling of identity, and that brings forth, more and more people getting together in gatherings or also in powwows, so we can see what's happening out in other territories. And so that again, it's just a really, really good feeling that brings around the pride and ancestry of who the Kuya are.
I love that there's been that resurgence, and I've seen like some of the youth who are, Kuya and whose ancestors the songs belong to, like really be transformed by reconnecting with the songs. How would you propose someone who is not, Kuya or another Native group honor the legacy of the bird songs without, like teaching the bird songs per se, without appropriating them? Like, how would you teach about it?
Yeah, just within the reservation, you have the elders. So again, you would go to who they are. We just had our California Native American days down here, and we had the Pomos and Yuroks, because we wanted to give everybody in Southern California that whole tapestry of not only Kuya Indians using gourds and gourd rattles, but we don't use drums in California. Northern California clapper sticks are very, very, they're instruments of choice. And so you can go to your tribe, go to the elders, and again, that's what basically we did, except we brought the elders to them. That would be something that would be probably mindful to do. Also, within the tribe, become get the stories down on tape, get the stories down on video. Let me just interject really, really fast at the California Truth and Healing Council, which was a governor's mandate coming from Governor Newsom, I think 2 years ago, to sit down and gather council members from the whole state of California to come down and talk about issues pertinent to California Indians. I'm on the education subcommittee, and again, so anything dealing with education, Assembly Bill 1703, which 1554 became, 1703 is now part of the curriculum, and again also ethnic studies. So, and again, that's what we're trying to figure out is what's the solution to all this misappropriation of identity of who California Indians are. And for us, and everybody on the panel, it's basically education. We got to get through that and educating non-Indians, Indians, and get at the field of teaching more and more educators who are California or American Indian. That would be my solution, because I'm a teacher, so we pick, counselors, more Indian counselors would be also helpful. And again, going around to different reservations and asking the kids, bullying. Why are they messing with your long hair? Why are they calling you Redskins?
Yeah.
Why are they doing this? And every time I ask them, I said, what if there was a California Indian teacher or an American Indian teacher on campus? Would this happen? Every single one of them said no. So again, we're killing two birds with one stone. Is that we get more emphasis on California Indian or American Indian history, and we can possibly stop the bullying that's happening with our children in the California public schools.
Absolutely. And I just have like a sort of a follow-up question to go with this. How would you propose or give advice, counsel to other Native folks who want to reconnect with, ancestor traditions? I'm going to give you an example. Okay. I have a student who is from a tribe. She's disconnected from a tribe from Washington, D.C. And she really, you can just tell that she needs that she's asking to be reconnected and to learn. How would you like advise someone like that to be able to reconnect to the ancestors' traditions and, even potentially, bring traditions back to, the youth and the next generation?
Well, yeah, usually, and again, what I find here at the university level is that a lot of students who come here don't know their background. Very little of the students that come here are not on-res students. And again, that's a little different idea that we're going to get into. But again, just go to the elders. I have one Shoshone boy here that he went to his first powwow with Mary and I, the Pomona powwow. And I said, just watch them dance and go ask them. They're not 99.9% of the time when you ask an elder about something, they're going to let you know. And again, that's what they would do up in Northern California. Go to a gathering, go to the reservation. If you're miles and miles away from someplace, yeah, I would just suggest maybe emailing the reservation back in DC, back in Passamaquoddy, the Pequot, the Lummi, go back and email them. I'm sure that they would love to talk to you about, or talk to the students about who they are, where they come from. I had one student in high school at Upland. She was Nebraska, but she had the tribe in the state of Nebraska. Told her to contact the tribe. She did, and she found her great grandfather was a tribal member, and from that, she got a full ride to the University of Nebraska on a history scholarship. So again, it's staying with it. So because sometimes the BIA will be a little bit tedious about what's going on, but as long as you keep on them, usually we find that they have a tendency to break down. Sometimes you may have to go there. I mean, my father did that with the BIA in Riverside, and every time he went there, they knew something was going to happen. But it's be tenacious, ask questions. And again, that's coming from what I've just picked up here at the university is the kids got to ask questions. You got to come here and be ready to ask a question. If you don't know, ask. And again, coming from my father and those three other elders, yeah, we don't know what you know or what you don't know, and unless you ask us, where do these songs come from? What are the songs that are happening? And a lot of times, as my Aunt Catherine would say, they really don't know what they're singing about, but my dad and the others would say, well, at least they're singing. And then after that, they can learn the language. They can learn that they're singing about the hummingbird. They're singing about the badger. They're singing about the life in the Coachella Valley. So again, that's what we should be looking for, is for them to just ask the questions. Just don't be afraid. And again, I have a little girl here who's Danae, and she knows she's from the nation, but she doesn't know where. And so we're just trying to figure out what chapter house which you need to go to. Just call Window Rock, ask them, and then hopefully they'll help you. So that's what I would say. Go to the powwows, go to gatherings, find out who they are, because again, if you don't know who you are, that's that may be an issue that's coming up.
I love that so much, Robert. Thank you. I think you've just inspired me actually to reach out to some of the tribes in DC and potentially even Zoom them into my class. I teach ethnic studies, but as I just shared with you right now, I have this student who has, in a very heartfelt way, reached out to me and said, I don't know. I want to know. I've always wanted to know. I just didn't know how. And so, and I knew I knew that she was Native immediately when I got her because of her last name. And so I immediately looked in the system to see if she was labeled as Native, and she wasn't. So what I did was, I just kept teaching what I'm teaching, and I could see her eyes get wide for land acknowledgements and ancestor acknowledgements. And whenever, we talk specifically about like, this is Native land, we need to normalize that we are on Native land because it's been taken from us, right? All the colonization has us so like used to, this is the US, this is the United States. And when you really look at the trajectory of history, it has not been not Native land for that long. It's been, it's a very short time ago, and we need to we need to go back to that being normalized daily. And so I can see with that student, her eyes, wide open. So you've inspired me to do that, to reach out, and maybe she can do further investigation and get a little bit closer to her actual tribe, but at least I can bring in those elders via virtual into my classroom and give her that opportunity to connect. So thank you for that. That's you just
No problem.
gave me
Well,
a
that's the best.
idea for this week.
That's the best part. That's the one
Yeah.
thing I miss about teaching is when the kids' eyes light up and then they just go up and their face lights up. And it's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I finally understand what US history is about. But I don't miss the other components, but the kids I really, really miss.
Yeah. No, for sure. Those are that's what makes it all worth it. Being exhausted all day is those moments. Okay, Teresa, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it.
Well, look in Mary's eyes.
They're always closed.
So
Yay.
one of our absolute privileges is to have Brownie Neddeau on with us. He storytelling and capturing stories of our Native siblings is also very important to shaping the identities of Native American children. So I know I've been waiting for this for a long time, and so I'm going to hand it over to Brownie to tell us about the importance of oral storytelling and how teachers can support the oral storytelling in their classrooms in a way that is respectful and that honors the traditions of Native American and American Indian students and communities and ancestors. So Brownie, can I hand it over to you for that?
Thank you so much. Such a big couple of questions in there, and I'm going to try to just touch on them and do some hands-on virtual work with everybody here to engage in something together. So if we can, I would just like to ask a couple questions, and if you can use your reaction button on the bottom with a thumbs up if this relates to you. Have you ever told someone a story that you just nailed it? You have that story. You told them the story, and it's one you've told so many times, and then you hear the person tell the story at a later time and it's all just wrong. It's all wrong. Has anybody done that before? Well, how does that make you feel? Can you use some words in the chat box to tell me, how does that make you feel when you hear the person that you nailed this story, when you told them the story, and then you're hearing them later on tell your story to maybe a different group? How does that make you feel? Oh, yes, uncomfortable, not heard, disrespected. Let correct you, sir. Disrespected. Do you have any feeling of ownership of the story and or the telling of the story? Like, you told them that story, you're hearing them. Do you feel like you need to correct them when they're telling the story? Yeah, that is not what I said. Like, I just wasted my time. Thank you. Like, I told you this important story, but I want you to continue, and you just butchered the whole story. And then, are you ever in the space when you're hearing them tell the story and you don't feel like you have the agency or the wherewithal to correct the story in front of the group of people of which they're telling the story? Or perhaps you've played this childhood game called telephone, and at the end of the whole game, you were maybe at the beginning of the game when you heard the story or told the story, and at the end of the game telephone, you're like, well, that was a completely different story than we started off with. So I'm framing this around oral storytelling, but I want you to think about the stories that you tell and the stories that you've been told, and how can teachers support your oral storytelling in the classroom, as well as the storytelling of your students in which you're serving and the families from which they're from and representing? And I hope this is a great starting point for thinking about ways that we can support oral storytelling in our classrooms that are respectful and honoring of traditions. But I wanted to start with these things to get these questions and prompts that I just shared with you to help you think of this in your own, from your own perspective. So with that in mind, I do have a PowerPoint with some images on it I'd like to share. So let me do this. Now, can you all see my slides? Can you see my little notes to myself? I hope not. I always have to ask that because then sometimes you go through your whole presentation and
Only
no one
the
ever says, okay, some people just, they don't tell you they couldn't see any of the slides because you have your own notes in front. Well, stories are grounded in place. And as we go through our time, this short time that we have for this section, I'd like to encourage you to consider the role that place plays in the stories that you live, learn, and grow from in your lives. And think about the stories that we just mentioned, like how does place play into the stories that you know or tell? Also, think about how the stories you hear and the story you tell honor the 7 generations before and after your time. Using the reaction button again, how many folks have read a story that is interpreted from another language? Okay. Has anybody done that in your classroom where you say, we're going to read Cinderella from 5 different perspectives and 5 different backgrounds? Well, what might be missing in the interpretation is what I kind of like to think about. What does the original language tell you about honoring the place? And in the slide I have here, it has an image of Turtle Island, and you'll see these language families on the side. Just take a moment to review the language families on the side. Yes, I see younger kids need discussion time and talking appears to understand. Thank you for sharing. So now I want to show you, while we looked at these key to language families on the side of this map. This map is also available on parks.ca.gov, and it's also been mentioned in the Flutes of Fire Essays on California Indian Languages from Haiti Books. If we look at this map, look at the language families on this map. And I'm going to go back in just a moment. Look at the language families on this map. Look for any similarities you might see. What are some things that you notice or observe? Anyone feel free to call to share out either via text or voice.
Can you go back to the other one just one more time?
Sure. And thank you, Marty, for your comment in the chat. Appreciate that. So then this is the other map.
The other map,
Mhm.
this one, but the other one makes it look like there are hardly any like native languages. Whereas like, I think you probably have a similar number of languages in this map as you see in just the California one alone.
Okay, thank you. I'm also acknowledging the comments that are in the chat box here as other noticings and wonderings and observations. When thinking about storytelling, then I like to acknowledge and bring to the front the importance and role that language plays in storytelling. So when we go to the next slide here, I wanted to highlight this one right here at the Baskin. And by the way, first you hear language before you're reading the language, before you're reading words on a page. And spelling might be different because the idea was that you could understand how to say it out loud. So notice the spelling might be different on the page, but I wanted to circle the Athabascan language on here. And that was on both of the slides, the one with all of Turtle Island and the one right here just with present day California on here. So what I'd like to do with using this map and thinking about even this telling of stories with language that might have, there might be some connection between this Athabascan in California and Athabascan language families in present day Turtle Island all over. Let me close my slides for just a moment, and I'm going to put a link in the chat box for you to click on. So using this link that you have, things going on with my PowerPoint presentation. Let's see here. Using the link that you have in your slides there, I'd like you to, if you go up in the slide on the atlas that you've clicked on, and if you click on the points that the layers option, and I'm going to show you that on my screen too. If you click on the layers option, we'll first agree to this disclaimer and then click on the layers option. You have all these different tools that you can use in your classroom for exploring and thinking about stories. And if you click on the one that's called trade relations, things will pop up on your screen. Take some time, you can click on the blue and find out about some trade relations there. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. Anna or Anna, do you have a question for me? Okay. So I'd like you to click on, click the following options to consider how language might have played into the ways of life and the stories that may be attached to these things. So you're at the cultural base map and then click on trade relations and click on the blue lines of trade relations for more information. And because we're limited on our time today, as you're clicking around and looking at all these different trade relations on here, you can have your students, and I've used this lesson with a fourth grade classroom during the pandemic. After spending time with your students with the digital atlas, You can consider how relocation of California Indians and tribes from outside of the present-day California borders might relate, connect, or even impact tribal communities as we know today and the stories that they tell. So take a moment to play around with that website, and you can think about all the possibilities. As my communities that I work in, we talk about dreaming, like dreaming of the possibilities that could happen with this tool as just a starting point for thinking about stories and the stories we could tell, or the stories that we could learn from, but not the stories that we create for other people's. We're starting with a question to lead to more questions. And as something that you might find helpful for younger learners, and maybe even for older learners, to get them even further engaged in the digital atlas, as you could provide them kind of like scavenger hunt questions. And some that I've given the students in the 4th grade classroom are the ones I'm going to put in the chat box. And these are not meant to have them really search and find, but they're meant for them to have a discussion about the questions themselves, like which tribe in California trades dried pumpkins? Also note that I'm trying my best in all of my questioning to have in present tense. Because, in our, well, I can't say, but in my experiences, history, social science textbooks have been written with American Indians in past tense. So, and these are the times when we can talk about, like, we're still here. We're still here. In my earlier teaching career, and I was teaching about American Indians, some of my students thought that I was dead because we were talking about American Indians, and I didn't realize that we were reading about my people in past tense. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm standing right here. So be intentional about asking questions in present tense. So these are just some questions that I posed to some 4th graders. Which tribe in California trades dried pumpkins? Who trades dugout canoes for food? Which tribe trades rabbit skin blankets with Miwok for clam disc beads? And then you can go over possible answers that they can find evidence for on the map program the link that I shared with you. And then maybe come up with some additional questions and stories and thinkings that you may want to address with people from those communities. Maybe you can ask particular questions to the cultural knowledge holders in the area. I see our time, so I'm going to move to my final slide, which is just going to be some questions to consider. I can get this to go. Okay. So the question that I was given was, tell us about the importance of oral storytelling. How can teachers support oral storytelling in their classrooms in a way that is respectful and honors the traditions? Things to consider in storytelling from my perspective and research and work in storytelling. Who has the right and privilege to tell a story? Be aware of the cultural guard that's a story. Maybe there are certain people who are the ones that are supposed to tell the story. Maybe there are only certain people that are supposed to hear the story. Who wrote the story in the textbook that now you're reading with the students? What kind of interpretations have happened in the stories from point A to point C, B, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is? How does the teller impact the message and meaning of the story? Just like we start off with from the beginning, when you're telling someone the story that you thought you nailed from the beginning and you've heard in your family for for generations, and then you hear someone later on down the line telling your story, and you're like, what the heck did you do? What the heck did you do? Is the context the same? Is the message the same? Did they change the meaning of the story? And what role does place play in understanding storytelling? In my tribe, where Shishibenik and Bendagwas, I'm an enrolled citizen Pawami Nation. Shishibe is duck, like the duck people. Like even in how we say that I'm enrolled citizen Pawami Nation talks about place and centers place, and our stories are about place. How are you honoring place in your classroom? Hint, this doesn't mean just reading a land acknowledgement with empty words that you don't do anything with after you've read the land acknowledgement, but what are you doing, like actionable things to honor the places of which you're residing in? And as I've said in multiple places, we're not guests on the land, we're uninvited guests on these lands. You're just there. Did you really go to the tribe who is the stewards of the land and say, hey, may I live here? Have you all done that? Has everybody all done that? You've all gone to the tribe. So we're not guests on the land. You're not guests on the land. How can you be a guest? It's like someone comes in and breaks into your house and you say, so I'm here. I'm here, I'm your guest. And you're like, I'm not inviting you. You're like, but I'm here, so I'm your guest of your land. So I just wanted to end with people. We use a lot of things and stories around land acknowledgements, and then we think that it seems like there's this feeling that now we've done that duty, check that performative measure. But we need to remember that unless you're speaking from your homelands, you're an uninvited guest. And at some places I've said, I'm like uninvited guest plus one because I've been invited with someone else. And I think that goes back to the power and importance of storytelling. And I hope this provides some ways that you might be able to consider using storytelling and the power and importance of storytelling in your classroom, just from that one tool and how I've used it with some fourth graders. Thank you.
Thank you, Browning. Honored. Lupe, turning it back to you.
Yeah, no, to answer your question, yes, you know, very much so. It really was inspirational for I'm definitely going to go back and play with the tool and see how I can do that with my my secondary students. So our final question is for everyone. It's for all of you. It's not necessarily for all of you, but all of you can respond to it in, you know, in whichever way is appropriate for you. But what are ways we can get more Native American educators in classrooms? I know you spoke about this a little bit earlier, but this is fundamentally important, right? This is like, we must start thinking about this good pipeline, right? Not the exile pipeline, but a good pipeline of really identifying our Native students and getting them to college and getting them back into our classrooms as Native students, but also as students who understand colonization and are coming back to decolonize our students. How can we do that? What are some good ideas? What are some good practices that we can all together collectively be a part of getting into action? What do you all think about that? Who would like to start? Okay, Robert, let's get you to start because you're at, you know, CSUS.
You're at Cal State San Bernardino.
Hey, what Chico and Humboldt used to be, we're trying to turn us into that teacher prep school. Usually what we're trying to do in terms of getting more educators in the classroom is, you know, we're talking about doing what UCs did and do the fee waiver here at CSUSB. And so that's one other way. Again, it takes the monetary anxiety off the students, and also that MOU that we had with Cal State, or for California Indian Nations College. We're looking to use that model to go to Victor Valley Community College, San Bernardino Valley College, our Riverside City College, College of the Desert, we're just trying to get more and more of that pipeline, like you mentioned before on your question, to those students who are American Indian students, Native American students who are going to those 2-year institutions, and support. We actually got support from UC Riverside. Cliff Taftner, who sits on the Costo chair, just got in contact with me 2 weeks ago and said, what can we do to help you guys to get the teachers? And I said, anything, Cliff, with your name on it would be just perfect for us to get, funding or people getting interested into what we can do. Also, what Claremont Graduate University does down here is they have a 5th and 6th year program for Native American students that after those 2 years, you get your master, your MED, and you get your credential. And they also have a stipend of like $1,000 a month. So, that's something that we're going to look into as attractions to Native American students to come to CSUSB. So that's the start. And again, the American Indian History Department, because when I was at San Diego State, that's where my major hang was there. Because the library was okay, but I like to hang with some peeps. And so going to the department, they always had somebody's office was always available for you to sit down and study. But again, that whole community, friendship, family feeling also.
Thank you. I saw Lupe put it in the chat, and I really feel it's something that we really do need to work on. I don't know if there's any legislation on it, but the fee waivers, free higher education for our Native and American Indian students, to me, is something that we really have to push for.
I agree, totally.
Something else that I think about too is, assistance with students who are living on reservations. For instance, oftentimes, not only is Wi-Fi service kind of not consistent and available, but even sometimes cell phone service is not consistent on a whole reservation. So I really think about our students who are, living on reservations and how we can support them getting, to be able to use, the 2-year institutions, or, being able to go straight to a 4-year. But either way, like the technology divide, it's huge. It's real. It's a huge barrier. What can we do? Like, that's something that we should start thinking about. What can we do to support getting technology, Wi-Fi?
That'd be grants, tribal grants.
Mhm.
And also with us down here, we also have our satellite campuses. We have a College of the Desert campus for CSUSB, and also UCR has a college, a Palm Desert campus. So bringing the universities closer to those who can't maybe have Wi-Fi or cellular service, or even transportation. We have a bus that runs, I believe, every hour on the hour between here and the Coachella Valley. So those students who need to come to CSUSB, they have transportation. And again, there's just different ways that we're trying to get those students here. And again, there's the retention. We're supposed to have 177 self-identified American Indian students here. I know of 8 that actually show up to the First Peoples Center or to my office, or just get involved with this new American Indian student organization we're forming.
Yeah.
And so that, it's a start. We need to just get our purpose and our identification out on campus. And here's something else you guys could do. Title VI programs for public schools. Get those up. And we hit up San Bernardino City and Banning Unified. And now I'm working into Palm Springs Unified and also Coachella Valley Unified to get those Title VI programs up and running. So again, we're starting this little movement down here, trying to recognize and again, support from the president, support from the legislature, the administration. I mean, we have Dr. Molly Springer down here, who's the vice president of student affairs, is just amazing. Navigating through the administration here on campus, and then again, support from Vice President Nava and President Morales has also been very, very helpful in getting the word out. Native American recruiters,
Yeah.
We don't have one yet, but we're working on it. So if anybody out there that wants to be a Native recruiter, come and look into Cal State San Bernardino.
I think all the CSUs need it. We all have, pitiful records in terms of Native American student enrollment. And
Yeah.
Anna put in that her district has a great pipeline for Filipino American students from elementary through James Logan, through the university. I think that it's important that we really do try to do that, and that ethnic studies is a place to create those kinds of mentorships and those kinds of programs.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mary or Robert, Mary or Marty or Browning, if you had anything to add, we are any closing statement before we end our evening?
No, just my shameless plug to, if anybody has any more questions or if one pops up for pipelines or CSUS systems, Browning's up north, I'm down south. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat room as soon as my secretary jumps on that. Also, just higher ed. I mean, we really don't need people in higher ed to become teachers.
Yeah.
And again, if you love anybody, send them down our way. This the big selling point down here is you'll be the first to do anything for the on campus, the first American Indian student organizing.
Yeah.
Sure. And just keep an open mind and come on down here for fun, but still to learn something and to come back and help your people.
Yeah. And if you're interested in helping on curricular issues, we're getting more lesson plans on our website. Mary and Robert chair our American Indian Studies chapter. They're working really hard on trying to do some lessons.
Oh, I have to co-chair, cool. And you will get that bird song. I promise you get a bird song.
I know, I want a bird song.
Okay, you got it.
I want to thank our panelists today, and I want to thank for those of you who are joining. We do have a couple of announcements. We're our next session for Liberating, we don't have a date for you yet, but we will send you information, is going to be with Tony Diaz, who just recently wrote a book called The Tip of the Pyramid, Cultivating Community Cultural Capital. It's our Chicano Studies folks are going to put together a session with Tony and Angela Valenzuela from UT Austin, who is engaging in a conversation. And then we'll be sharing some lessons from our Chicano Studies chapters for you. That should be forthcoming. So look for that.
We'll also be having a performance by Secret Service as well. So that's
that's right.
That's something to look forward to. That'll be part of the Tony Diaz, Angela.
Yeah, so
as well.
We're excited by that next session. And then keep an eye out on the Liberated Ethnic Studies website, because we are quickly churning out lesson plans, and those lesson plans are being posted onto the website. And if you yourself want us to do anything in your schools or districts or unions, let us know. We'd be willing to do that. Well, I want to thank you. I know it's been a long day for all of you. Most of you work all day, and we're honored and privileged to have you in this community. And especially thank you to Mary and Browning and Marty and Robert for always being there for us when we want to share the importance of working with our Native American communities and our American Indian communities. So thank you so much, you all. Have a great rest of your evening.